It's incredible seeing history being made right here on this stage today. Ladies and gentlemen, we can now officially begin with the conference, starting with the first panel titled Future of Business, Spotlight on Oman. Joining us for the first panel, we have Mahmoud Abdullah Al-Awaini, the Program Director of Istidama Program Oman, and he will be the moderator with us today. And joining us in this panel discussion, we have Haytham Al-Salmi, Chief Executive Officer at Muscat Stock Exchange, in addition to His Excellency Tahir Salem Al-Amri, Executive President at Central Bank of Oman. And last but not least, His Excellency Sayyid Dr. Mundhir Al-Busaidi, Vice Chairman of Oman Vision 2040 Implementing Follow-Up Unit. Let's give them a warm welcome.
الله وبركاته. نرحب بضيوف السلطنة الكرام من اتحاد أسواق المال العربية والبورصات المشاركة والمشاركين كذلك من داخل السلطنة. حقيقة it's a warm welcome to see you here, and Mahmoud Al-Awaini, I'm the Managing Director for the National Program of Financial Sustainability and Financial Sector Developments, and I'm honored today to have a wealth of knowledge already on the stage with His Excellency Sayyid Mundhir Al-Busaidi, Deputy Chairman for Oman Vision 2040 Follow-Up Office, and His Excellency Tahir Al-Amri, the Executive President for Central Bank of Oman, and Mr. Haytham Al-Salmi, the Executive Officer for Muscat Stock Exchange. So I will start the discussion from probably what ended from His Excellency's speech. If the economists allow me to describe it, it's an economic remontada where Oman economic situation started 3 years ago and where we are now. It was a big shift overall. And a lot of key drives have been defined by Oman Vision 2040, certainly, to go into a certain position that we are ambitious to reach there. So there are a lot of transformation happening overall from different angles, and the economic side of it is leading that transformation. And hence, my first question usually go to the vision, to talk overall about the ongoing efforts of implementing Oman 2040 and the key probably directions that the vision is trying to drive over the coming future for Oman, short term, mid term, and long term. So the question for you, Your Excellency Sayyid Mundhir.
Thank you, Mahmoud, for the question. I guess when you look at it, when you look at the Vision 2040, it's quite an ambitious vision, and there are many things to tackle over the time until 2040. So we had to have a starting point, and then I think His Excellency Nasser, when he talked about Tawazun, probably that was the essence where we started talking about the vision. And we started talking about that because at that time, the scenario, the economic scenario, necessitated that we have to focus on at least financial sustainability. And that was the essence where we started. The focus was basically to become more efficient in terms of finances, try to maintain spendings, and try to control or put a tab on how do we spend and make sure that the economy is sustainable. And that was the starting point. Of course, once Tawazun was actually started the initial process, or not initial initiatives, then we started shifting gear. We tried to focus on the other things. And it's basically getting your house in order. One of them, of course, we had to focus on investments. And the approach for the vision was relying so much on national programs. National programs are basically accelerators to focus on certain key areas to develop across time. Our next focus was basically investment, and that's why we had Nasdahir program, which is basically focusing on attracting investments in Oman. And they're focused on 3 pillars. Of course, one of them is the business environment, making sure that we have the house ready to attract investors. The second thing is actually attracting investment, and there's a good progress on that field. If my memory does not fail me, I think the focus was getting around 11 billion investments from Oman until 2025. And there's a huge progress in that field, mostly driven by the tourism sector. But there's also focus on other sectors, like, for example, manufacturing, and there's also some green economy, as well as mining, for example. And the other part is basically focusing on export and import. During that stage also, we had to focus on other things that are very essential. For example, the labor issue. We had to focus on developing our labor sector to make sure that there's a balance between demand and supply. And of course, as His Excellency mentioned, and Mahmoud is also the director here, Tawazun was shifted from just sustainability to basically making sure that we develop the financial sector and also the insurance sector. The other national programs that are focused on as well, there is one for carbon emission. I've seen something on the pamphlets on my table talking about ESG, and that's one of the focus areas. The program is focusing on meeting the targets that are set for 2050. And among them, of course, there's a focus on ESG and ESG investing. So the current focus was on the national programs, them being the accelerators in certain areas. The other approach, of course, we have 12 priorities. And in each priority, we started working on each one and trying to identify key focus areas. I'll not go through the 12 priorities, of course, here, but I'll try to mention some examples. There's one priority for the private sector. And in that field, we're trying to focus on things related to developing SMEs and moving them from small businesses to actually large businesses. There's also focus on kind of getting, again, things in order, like having the system ready. There is an establishment of the arbitration center. And this is the pattern that is followed in each priority. There's a focus area. So if you look at the vision, how is it implemented? It's mainly 2 things. One of them is the 6 national programs focusing on key areas, and I'll just name them. There is financial sustainability, there is investment, there is labor, tashgheel, there is also there's digital transformation, and am I missing someone else? Yes, and most important, of course, is the economic diversification. This is also one of the latest programs that is focusing on connecting the economy and making a focus on finding the right economic connection between sectors. And digital transformation, of course, this was a total of 6 programs. And the other part, of course, we're tackling each priority with certain focus areas, and we're trying to develop them over at least until 2025, and then we set direction for the next 5-year plan.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It seems there's a clear vision and direction that we are aiming to get in. And probably the next question to His Excellency Taher Al-Amri, with the current situation of the, I don't want to say crisis in the banking sector within US and others, but these are offering certainly kind of challenges. So with the internal clear direction and KPIs offered by the Oman Vision 2040, how do you see the overall current economic situation, and probably to elaborate more, the readiness of the financial sector to support that direction?
Thank you, Mahmoud. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. First, very grateful to be here. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to also to participate in this panel. To be honest, and everything is a journey, and I think what we heard, the speeches, His Excellency Nasser, Mr. Rami, Engineer Muhammad, they talk about the journey, and His Excellency also mentioned the situation always needs adaptation. So whatever is happening in that either era or that space, industries, sectors need to adapt. The banking sector, I believe, is actually at the forefront of that. It needs to react and it needs to be proactive. So you mentioned the word crisis, and that's something that will always be there. There will always be something, but you need to make sure that you are proactive in making sure that you are anticipate and you take proper measures not to be in that situation, but at the same time also see the opportunities. Seeing the opportunities is very important. His Excellency mentioned the percentage of the financing that is now dominated by the banking sector, and that there is an opportunity for the capital markets to actually come into that. It's an opportunity for the capital markets, and it will be an opportunity for banks because they will be part of it. The financial markets have a strong presence of the banking sector as entities and as companies. So I believe it's very important to look at the journey, be proactive, be very prudent, and also look at the opportunities in any situation, crisis or otherwise. And that's what we are trying to do. And you have to be balanced, because we hear about the technologies and what's happening and how it's going forward, sandboxes and otherwise, and you need to be part of that. But at the same time, you need to be prudent, and you need to look at what are the risks and how do you mitigate them, but at the same time not to be left out because you are too cautious.
No, perfect. In fact, to be honest and be fair as well for our banking sector, they pass through certain challenges, and we could be a benchmark of how stable we are in terms of being conservative and driving stability to the economy overall. So that's experienced several times, and we hope that continue as well. Mr. Haytham, I will take the word journey from His Excellency Tahir. And is MSX ready for this journey? It's a tough transformation journey with a high ambitious. So are we ready for that journey? And what's the plan from MSX for this?
Hello everyone. First, MSX is the successor of MSM. Earlier it was a government unit, and I think the first journey that government took is to transform the exchange into a more commercial based business, and where we have skin on the game. Our survival now is mainly based on our financial sustainability. So we need to create that revenues and make sure that we help the market to engage. We have more market cap, we have more tradings, and that will create our revenues. Then we can develop our market. So that was the first step toward having a clear path of what we need to achieve. And the first thing we did is to have a 5-year strategy that will tackle all the investment requirement for us. We, as exchanges, are mainly a financing tool where we bring the excess fund to the project. This is the first one. The second one is to be a secondary market. So we need to make sure that in both areas, as a primary market or secondary markets are visible. We need to focus on our infrastructure and make sure that we have all the required setup to observe new businesses. So what we did is focusing into 2 areas, infrastructure, and we need to make sure that we do have the full infrastructure required to host all the initiative from the government and from the private sector. And we were there since a very long time to have the right setup in terms of technologies, in terms of procedures, regulations. But there are some tick boxes that we need to cover, including the new trends. So we engaged more into disclosures requirements, especially when we talk about ESG. This is a very new theme that all the markets are looking into. So we need to make sure that we do have the right disclosures platform that tackles this. Moreover, market access, the requirement for investors to exit the market, as well the incentives for companies to come and use the exchange as a financing tool. And that's why we created a 5-year plan. And in each year, we have certain strategies that we need to achieve. And we believe one of the main flags that we need to achieve is the upgrade of market to emerging markets. So we kept this at the core of our strategies, and what we are doing now, along with our main stakeholders and shareholder, Oman Investment Authority, that we need to achieve all the required infrastructure and liquidity that's help us to upgrade the market. Then the market will be into the radar of the investors, international and local, and that will allow more companies to come, get higher values, get more liquidity, and that's what has been put in our core strategies.
Thank you, Haytham. In fact, I was pleasured when I hear in one of the speeches that Oman Vision 2040 is something that we need as well to expand in terms of learnings to others. And no doubt there's a lot of efforts already happened. So after these few years of implementation, Your Excellency, what lesson learned we can share with others on the implementation stage of Oman Vision 2040?
Sure, that's a very good question. I think there are always lessons learned. Maybe I started with something yesterday. I was doing through my executive coaching. I have a coach, and I was, coach is always a person just to vent to. I was complaining like there's so many priorities. Every time there's a new priority coming up, and I would like you to help me to set up how do I filter these priorities? And her answer were basically, that will never happen, because priorities is always as a snapshot of priorities that are today, and tomorrow is something else. And this is probably one of the key lessons, like when you're trying to implement a vision, your priorities will keep on shifting. And that's natural, because every now and then there's something else coming up, and you have to be basically adaptive. What was important a year ago is no longer important right now. So one of the key lessons, you have to keep this open mind in terms of priorities. You don't get fixated on one thing and that's it, and you drive it. You should be accepting of changing direction if you need to, if this is in the best interest of the country. So one of the key things is adaptability, and accepting that there's nothing that will be constant. There's always change will also be an essence. The second thing is, of course, which is a challenge in everywhere, is like the silo mentality. Whenever you're trying to implement big visions, it's good to work as a one unit. It's good to work together. And this is a challenge that's been happening across time. We're way better than before, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but there's always a challenge. You have to break these silos, and you have to find a way to work together. You have to bring people together, and this will only happen by aligning interests. You have to get people on the same page, on the same mindset, at least, or goals. The third thing is communication. I think probably one of the key lessons, very important lesson, is the communication in terms of Vision 2040. And this is the thing that we've been always criticized with, like, you're not communicating enough, and it's proved to be very essential. One of the ironic things, like, until now, we still get sometimes requests. We want to know more about Vision 2040. And I'm like, it's already 2 years, and maybe you're too late right now. But then when I thought about it, it's like, actually, maybe we are our own failure in terms of doing more in terms of communication. And it's very important, because to get people aligned, you have to be transparent. You have to show what's actually happening. So key 3 lessons: adaptability, breaking silos, and it's very important to work on communications.
Thank you, Saeed. Your Excellency Tahir, I think I'm giving the tough question to you. So in an oil exporting country, we always get criticized, specifically our private sector, that they are oil dependents, and need incubation all the time. So is this real first? And how do you see that challenge in the upcoming future?
You mean the banking sector? It's overall. Again, I think it's natural. So you have a hydrocarbon-based economy. The revenues is still dominated by the revenues that come out of the hydrocarbon industry, and therefore everything around it is also that. So it's very natural that if you have an opportunity in that space that you can actually serve and make a business thrive, you will always go there. So you'll always be dependent. The other side is when you talk about, for example, risk of financing, whether it is the capital markets or the banking sector. When you look at a business, that is because one of the things that they have, what do you call it, and you put forward to your credit committees or your boards or whatever, is the business environment. So market risk, competition risk, that all what do you call it, isn't it? If you go to the capital markets in your prospectus, you will have all of that detailed. And therefore, when you look at an industry that is very solid, that is very tested, that is sort of the ecosystem around the world is very solid, it's very natural that you will depend and you will want to be there. But it's also innovation. It's trying to think of what other people are not doing, or and therefore how can I actually pioneer in that? That's the drive that needs to be basically promoted, including innovative financing tools from the banking sector and the capital markets. And around the world, this is where venture capitalists, angel investors, and people who believe that this small thing is going to be huge in the future because it's just simply unique, is fantastic. So if you look at, for example, these projects on space missions that are not going to be viable in the near future, but money is being pumped. People are financing those projects because they believe in the future it's going to be something different, and so on and so forth, including the environmentally friendly projects. So one, it's a very natural thing, but what we need to promote and drive and also support those small innovators, small maybe businesses now that are looking into things that are not straightforward, that are not natural. So a credit committee in a bank or the capital market or everything needs to actually be able to change the mindset and be courageous enough to put the money into those things. Otherwise, it will not change.
Your Excellency, do you see or do you foresee a change in the mindset within the private sector for capturing these opportunities?
Yes, simply because I will go from the general, human beings are very adaptive and very progressive, what do you call it, species. So that will happen naturally. And I think businesses as well. And there are people who will want to do something unique. They want to be different. It's just a matter of how much of that can you actually cultivate within an environment and within an ecosystem. And that's what we are trying to do. You know, when you talk about sandboxes, when you talk about accelerators, when you talk about what do you call it? We just witnessed the signing of the what do you call it? The lab and the funding of that for what? So there will be people who will apply to that, wanting to get funding to actually do something different. I don't see, for example, regular run-of-the-mill projects being accepted into this because that's not the point of it. And therefore, there is a drive to change and there will be change. How fast and how big is always the question.
Allow me, Mahmoud, to comment on this as well. When we talk about diversification of revenues, I think we need to redefine that area. As His Excellency mentioned that we have the oil, we will depend on it, and whenever we can have a way to enlarge that portion, we will do it. So whether it's by price increase or by adding more production into the line. But the question is how much that covers from your expenses, is I think the major point. Is not how much it takes from the revenue, because that will always be there. We will try to add another source of revenues to the country. As long as that portion of oil increases higher than the other part, then it will always remain that we will depend 70, 80% in case we calculate it based on revenues. But the question is the other non-oil elements, how much it covers from our expenses and needs. And I think that we need to enlarge and make sure that we don't depend on oil to cover expenses. We depend on oil to create the excess on the budget.
Yeah, thank you. I always admire Haytham courage when he stand in front of everybody and say, this is the exchange of opportunities. And it seems this is aligned as well with the vision mission there to attract FDIs, to regain the confidence in the market. So what are we doing in the MSX to attract or re-attract the players into the market?
So the first thing we did, and the first roadshow we did in MSX was in London and meeting asset managers. So because they contribute mainly to the FDI that comes to Oman. Currently, we are at almost 23% of our market cap owned by non-Omanis. So that's the percentage of foreign ownership. And around 22% is the trading volume that happened in 2022. And it's good to mention that 13% of that is institutional trades. And we thought visiting those asset managers will be the major and main feedback that we build our infrastructure on. So we found that we have almost all the required for them to enter the market in terms of infrastructure. And what they need to know is whether we have the regulations, the registrar that prove their ownership, the custodianship procedures and processes in place. And then we found that there are certain limitations in terms of their calculation of investable market cap. And then we found we need to work into the maximum limits of foreign ownership. By the law, the foreign investment law that has been issued in 2019, it increased the limit to 100% for almost all the required sectors. And then we took a brave action with the Capital Market Authority to eliminate the limits. So it's 100% open. And that increased our our investable cap by 70% overall, if we calculate the crown jewels, the top 13 companies. And that was the first step. Second step is to find the easy access for the adding to that, what has been issued by early this year is the elimination of withholding tax on dividends as well. That was a great success that removed the uncertainty on this ground that has been there for a very long time. Now, in terms of market accessibility, we have certain projects that will run within this year, allowing the omnibus structure, because this is one of the requirements of FDIs to enter the market. Focusing on roadshows, of course, the exit strategy is the main focus of foreign investments, that whenever they enter the market, they want to make sure that they can exit easily. And liquidity is one of the major issues. So the other products that we're working on, like liquidity provider, market makers, that along with the Istidama, we are working together with the capital market authorities to issue it soon. So those will tick the boxes that is required for our market. Of course, the ultimate goal is to upgrade the market to emerging market that will create the success of the story.
Perfect. Probably we could as well allow burning questions in the audience minds after this wave of questions for the audience here. So if there's any one or two really burning questions you want to add to the panel here. But Your Excellency, it's a philosophy that we gain in the national programs. That's not about the efforts that we are spending. It's about the impact that we are leaving on the direction given from the mission. So how are we assuring that there is an impact on the upcoming plans and the near future from these programs, from all these efforts happening from Oman Vision 2040?
That's a hard question, but I'll try to answer it in my probably the best way I can address the concern. From our side, from the follow-up unit, it's we have certain KPIs that these national programs has to meet. And our approach is basically focusing on how they are achieving these KPIs. And the follow-up, and I think Mahmoud, you know better, is sometimes can be intense and bothering and annoying. And this is our approach of making sure that these programs are actually meeting the targets. Another approach that's probably can be considered as well, like these programs can be evaluated at the end of their duration. Like at the end of the duration, there's a whole evaluation of the program. How did it, and from that, we're trying to aim for two things. For example, lessons learned, just in case we wanted to establish a new national program for the next period. And the same thing, making sure that we avoid the mistakes that happened from last time. And the third thing, of course, is just to make sure that whatever we plan to do, we actually achieved at the end. There's no one right answer. There are different approaches how to address this. And I guess it's still a learning stage. Like we started national program since 2020, almost. And for us, it's just a learning journey, and we're trying to learn as much as we can from that. And hopefully by 24, 25, things are getting better. I'm not sure if there will be more national programs, but at least these are the programs that we have. And it's an ongoing improvement process as we go.
Thank you. Any question from the audience before we move?
I think you said burning questions. No one has a burning question.
Yeah, there's one question here.
They're looking for food right now, I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentations and the discussion. My question is more for the stock exchange, for Muscat Stock Exchange. Before you go into being classified as an emerging market, do you think that Omanis themselves have invested the best they have and the best they can in the stock exchange, in the companies? And I mean, did you mobilize your own internal resources before you go to foreign resources? That was my question. It's a challenge that we are all facing in every stock exchange. And that's why I'm asking you for that. Thank you.
It's the major challenge, actually. It's not the, it's a story of having the right investment instrument that attracts retail. And honestly, Muscat Stock Exchange has a very poor IPOs comparing to the other markets neighbors. And it's a story of all oil producing countries where most of the services that comes to the public are made by government initiatives, telecom, power companies, and everything. And the story of listing those companies comes later on. That really helps the markets. So what we have seen in Oman is that the appetite comes when there is a big national IPO that attracts retail. And we have seen in 2005 when we had Omantel, is the largest IPO that happened in Oman at that point of time, that attracted 163,000 investors to the platform. And since then, we have never seen a government IPO at all. All the IPOs that came later on was a small in size, a bit attractive. Yes, we do have attractive companies that had 40,000 applications, 24,000 applications, but that never sustained because there was no a clear momentum. It was separated, the exchange from the regulator, from the stakeholders, mainly the government investment authorities. So what happens now is we do have alignment. We have our own Oman Vision 2040. We have Istidama, which is the national program. We are now owned by Oman Investment Authority, who holds more than 160 companies under their umbrella. So the story is now a complete story. What we need to create now is the momentum, bring more players to the market. And what we face actually in Oman, that we do have a huge concentration of ownership. So to break that down, we need more tools rather than just break it by law or whatever. Whoever, whether retail, whether small investor, large investor, they're looking for investment opportunities. That's the ultimate goal. So investment opportunities means that we need to create alternatives for them to shift from this to the other, and that creates the trading. So we had the first IPO after 17 years, which was last month, which is Abraj, a huge success to Oman. It has been covered 10 times. 39,000 applications came, a huge demand from retail. The allocation of retail was 15% of the IPO size. It has been increased to 35, which was the maximum set by the regulator. So 35% went to the retail, and we have seen huge trading in the market because of that. And what we want to create is creating that momentum, bringing IPOs, a clear vision, a clear plan of what will enter the market. And that's at the end on our stakeholders, and that's what we are trying to market and gain their concession on what we want to achieve.
Thank you, Haytham. Before I take the second question, probably a short elaboration on this. We believe we have the opportunities, and investors, local, regional, or international, are following the opportunities. But in Istidama, we also believe that these opportunities has to be marketed well and supported by a solid financial services sector. And that's why it's on a spot now how we can really empower this financial services sector from one way and increase the competition within it to make a real impact on supporting MSX on that direction. So I hear the second question from that side. Yeah.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Hatham, for making more elaborating, statement about what Oman is doing it. We are here for African Federation. So we would like to know from all the, stakeholders, being the African, being a part of it, that how we can increase the liquidity. Mr. Hatham very clearly stated that how liquidity can be improved. I appreciate. Without liquidity, you cannot actually, invest in the stock market or capital markets rather. The whole world, private equity is the alternate resources, but that is not a liquidity. The retail participation is not there. We believe that the trading pattern are in the capital markets which is deriving the real value of a stock price or an entity price, which is actually driven by 90% by the retail. So in that scenario, I would like to understand that from other stakeholders, how the way the MSX has actually initiated, and we are moving into that direction. Other stakeholders would like to light how their stock market can become liquid, well participated by the retail, because the market has to have a retail participation, not the only corporate participation. If there is only a corporate participation, then it becomes like, it's like the market which is driven by a few.
I think the question is very clear. Probably I will ask Haytham first how we will increase liquidity, and then open for any other support on this.
Of course, liquidity is the blood of the exchange, and what I have mentioned being commercial, that our revenue comes from liquidity. We get our commission based on that. So our skin in the game. So what we want to create is to create that incentives that brings people into whether retail or what we need is more players. Retail are the active traders who really be there on daily trades, and we want to engage that. We want to create those opportunities. We have a very high dividend yield rate compared to other markets because we are a frontier market. As long as we are a frontier market, that dividend yield will be high, but it's based on dividends, it's based on annual, and it doesn't create the price changes that will make people speculate or trade on a daily basis. So all the initiatives that we did internally as an exchange is to engage participants, mainly brokers and intermediaries, opening the platform for market makers and liquidity providers. And it's open, I assure you. Although the regulations are not yet approved, we got an approval from CMA that whoever have a clear instruments that he wants to be a liquidity providers, we can approve it from now. And the vice president of CMA is here, and he can also confirm that. The issue that we cannot be a market makers our own as an exchange. It has to be through the intermediaries, through a professional companies to do that. From our side, we are also focusing on disclosures, increasing the disclosures, upgrading the disclosures, and make sure that all the information on companies are as per standards and on spot. So the infrastructure, I believe we do have it, is how we engage people. And again, back to the ultimate goal, ultimate story is to have instruments. We have seen it with Abraj, and I believe if we do have more IPOs coming, that will bring people in. Abraj has proved that even the trading after the listing has continued, taking its momentum, and the price has increased. Today's prices, if anyone is following, yesterday and today's prices has went up on Abraj, and that proves the story that we need instruments at first stage. Then those liquidity boosters will help achieving the goal.
Any addition, Your Excellencies? Yeah, maybe I will take permission for one final quick question to His Excellency Tahar. It's about defining our priorities with this transition. How are we defining as a regulator, the financial sector transitions there and priorities?
Thank you. With regards to the banking sector, of course, I mentioned before, the encouragement is for the banking sector to be to go outside the conventional, to try and reach out into new ventures of either financing in terms of products, in terms of sectors, and in terms of even new business lines. Adopt technology, incubate, maybe invest in, and actually encourage rather than be afraid of. So that's something with regards to the banking sector. Maybe something also that is related to the markets and the liquidity is what you don't want to see is, for example, you have two options of financing where you go to the markets or you go to the commercial banking. What we try with our limits is to make sure that you go to the market, and then the people who invest in the market borrow every single thing from the banking sector, which means you have not actually achieved what you want to achieve. So you want to grow the market, create new liquidity, shift some liquidity from other probably less productive, less value adding activities, but probably safer, less risky, to the market, and make sure that the market grows and brings in value into the economy. The other one is technology, innovation, all these new aspects need to be closely followed, need to be, entities need to also be proactive, see where the market is going, and again, financial stability and risk management.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And the journey is certainly full of challenges. However, we are so optimistic. We are optimistic because now our credit rating is growing and we think we can drive it more. I think there is already a forecast from IMF for 4.4% of growth in GDP for 2023. I think now we have an integrated efforts, which probably not used to be, to support one direction, which is the vision direction. And all of that keeping us optimistic that we can make a real change in a very dramatic, I would say, and optimistic ambitions that we are aiming for. So thank you for your attention, and thanking the panel here for their contribution and answers. Thank you very much.